This is the mandatory part of the video where I say warning for flashing lights and colors. Please enjoy this reading of my story's concept prologue and the speed paint in the background. 6 years ago. Strong hooves thundered down the well-worn road, bending the long, dead grass and tall trees that stood on either side of the racing, cloaked figure. The horse snorted and shook its head, trying to relieve the stranglehold the rider had on its mane as it galloped at full speed down the long highway. The figure was desperately watching for the landmarks that would lead them to their salvation. They knew their escape was going to be much harder to navigate in the approaching night, and the islands were sinking into the dark underbelly of the void faster than they'd anticipated. The tall, dark trees on either side of the dirt highway beckoned them forward, encouraging their desertion. The rider glanced over their shoulder to make certain no one was following them, hoping they had gotten a clean getaway. Small pinpricks of light were beginning to glow in the large palace in the distance, the peak of the tallest spire still holding the light of day as the rest of it sank into the shadows. For any normal traveler, the city surrounding the palace would have been considered a home, a sanctuary from the long and unfamiliar forest roads, but to Fawkes it felt like it was just another massive prison. Whipping back around to face the road, they felt hot tears threatening to sting their eyes as hatred bubbled up inside of them for the ruler of the castle. After all of the years under her rule, after all of the visions of war and bloodshed Fawkes had been forced to predict for her, the Queen had still been unsatisfied. "Foresee our victory!" The Queen's demand echoed in Fawkes's mind as the horrific images of war and death crawled around in their skull. They felt unable to stop the visions from appearing, threatening to drown them in the prophetic bloodbath, just as they had been unable to stop the Queen from destroying their home. Fawkes wished they could have had a normal life, one where they had been born ungifted, free to live on their family's farm in peace with their siblings, where they didn't have to worry about fate or destiny or war. It was such a small, stupid mistake that pushed them into the spotlight of the crown, one that Fawkes had regretted their entire life, and they had been wrenched away from their normal life into the large gilded cage alongside the Queen. Hate was too simple of a word for Fawkes's feelings towards the ruler. The longing of a normal life was soon overtaken as the world-ending prophecy boomed in their mind once again, reminding them of their duty. Fawkes had made a promise to themselves. This was the one they'd keep a secret. Their final prophecy. The one that foretold the inevitable end of everything that had ever been and ever will be. They felt a small sparkle of satisfaction at the knowledge that the Queen would never know. Not for another few years, at least. Another seer would have the same vision later, but it still gave them a satisfyingly long amount of time to let nature click into place. Fawkes was brought back to themselves as they saw the first landmark ahead of them, trying hard to focus on the current moment and actually complete their escape before getting too proud of themselves. 1 fence post. 2 fence posts. There! A break in the trees, and Fawkes wrenched the horse to the left, skidding along the stones and dirt as they turned into the hidden farmyard approach, avoiding the hanging branches that grasped at their masked face. The grey, rotting silhouette of a barn got closer and closer as they rode up the long drive, the fingers of a long-dead tree holding tightly onto the roof, desperately trying to tear it down, but it stubbornly still stood. A large pile of charred rubble sat near the barn, the final resting place of the farmhouse that once belonged to Fawkes's family, now only there to hold the remaining skeletons of their childhood. They glared straight ahead, not even daring to look into the ashen shadows of the graveyard. They knew the dead had nothing more to say to them. Fawkes started to slow their horse after they noticed a small light swaying inside the tilted barn, a lantern's flame flickering through the wide holes in the wood. Skidding to a stop right outside the barn door, Fawkes dismounted and readjusted their long green cloak and satchel, making certain the object inside was still there. Their hand brushed against hard red leather and a gilded spider-shaped lock, reassuring them that the small book hadn't fallen out during their escape, and that there was still a glimmer of hope left for the world. Branching visions crawled back to the surface of Fawkes's mind, hammering painful waves across their skull, warning them of what was still to come. Fox was nearly sick to their stomach as they quickly followed the paths. White pages and blood-red leather burning by lantern light. A rabbit dashing across packed dirt, and an arrow lodged deep into Fox's own breast. The wrench of gravity as they tumbled down into the deep dark bottom of the void. Bright white sand blowing away in the wind. Darkness and pain everywhere, all at once. Fox held their tight chest, leaning against the tall horse, trying to get their heart to slow down. They could almost already feel the bandit's arrow sticking out of their own breast. They knew there was a very slim chance they were even going to make it to the harbor's edge, but they still had to try. "Do you really think we can trust the mistress?" A muffled, deep voice came from inside the barn, snapping Fox out of their trance. "After everything they've done for the Queen." The light stopped moving at the back of the barn, and Fox squeezed their tiny body against the edge of the door to get inside, still trying to calm their raging heart. A large, uncovered wagon sat in the middle of the long room, 2 oxen still tied to the front of it. The animals regarded Fox with lazy eyes as they carefully squeezed past them. "Have you seen this place?" A feminine voice said incredulously, the click of knitting needles filling the air. "Do you really think that anything they've done for the Queen was done willingly?" Near the back wall, sitting on a rotting crate, a woman worked masterfully on a half-made project, a spool of golden yarn sitting in her lap. Her long, silver hair was pulled up into a loose ponytail, the tight spirals messily held out of her copper face by the cloth band. Her dark brown eyes watched a tall, pale man pace back and forth as he fidgeted with his light blue cloak. "I don't know." He nervously brushed his golden hair out of his eyes, crossing his arms. "Fox being late for anything just isn't like them. What if they were being followed by the guards? They might arrest us." "Oh, calm down," the woman waved at him. "Fox said they just needed to get something rather important before we left." "Did they say what it was?" he asked, still pacing. "No. But maybe they needed to sneak into the Queen's bedroom to get it. Oh, or maybe they were stealing something from one of the vaults." She laughed and rubbed her freckled hands together mischievously. "I don't know." The young man paled, and he stopped pacing to lean against a stall pillar, only to have it creak ominously, and he quickly stood back up. "I appreciate you having so much faith in me." Fox melted out of the shadows before the woman could continue. "But I think that sneaking into the Queen's bedroom at this time of night would prove to be rather difficult." "Mistress Fox!" the woman exclaimed, nervously fixing her hair, and nearly dropped her knitting on the ground. I was just joking, of course." She laughed as the young man looked worriedly into the shadows behind Fox. Fox rolled their eyes. These two never seemed to know when they were also joking. Too focused on determining on whether or not what they had just said had been a prophecy or a premonition. But they trusted them with their life, and that was no joke. "Are you alone?" The man's voice cracked, and Fox straightened their back to appear taller. Even at their full height, they barely reached the breast of the young man. "Yes," Fox said. "Is everything ready? We better leave before it gets any darker out there." They pulled their hood back to reveal their ornate fox mask and long, fiery hair. "Yes, ma'am." The woman quickly stood from the crate, shoving her knitting into a small bag and threw it into the wagon. "Did you get what you needed?" the man asked, studying Fox as he grabbed the lantern off the floor. "I did." Fox patted their satchel and climbed into the back of the wagon with help from the woman. It was filled with blankets, crates, and cases for their long journey. Fox had planned this escape many times before, but only now was it really worth it to leave everything behind. "What is it?" he asked curiously, and the woman gave him a scornful look. Fox studied him for a moment. White pages and blood-red leather burning by lantern light. He was still holding the lantern in his hand, raising it up to shine the flame on their faces. "You'll know soon enough," Fox answered, turning their masked face away from the light. They weren't trying to be mysterious or rude, but they couldn't afford to lose the book just yet, as the closest branch in their mind petered out and went dark. The man and woman looked at each other in awe before the woman shrugged nonchalantly. The man hesitated for a moment longer before going to wrench the crooked barn doors open as wide as they could go. He led the oxen forward as the cart rumbled along the uneven terrain, catching on a loose floorboard for a moment before pulling free. The entire barn creaked, and the three of them watched it sway, hastily moving away from the structure. Fox's horse was already halfway across the yard, grazing in the dark, overgrown field. As much as Fox wanted to take the horse with them, it wasn't theirs to keep. It had been as much of a prisoner to the castle as they had been, and they wanted to give it its freedom too. "Are we ready?" the man called as he pulled himself into the driver's seat, setting the lantern on a hook. They all nodded, and he flicked the reins to start them onward, the oxen snorting at the added weight in the wagon. Fox was finally doing it. They were finally taking fate into their own hands and not giving it to someone else to misinterpret or abuse. Freedom whistled through their gilded mask, the voices from the end of the world whispering in their mind once again as they shivered in excitement. And the Queen is never going to know. Fox held tightly onto their satchel, looking up into the starry sky as they tried to hold back the visions of pain and death on the horizon to enjoy their one moment of triumph. The whine of old wood finally being pulled to the ground behind them felt all too satisfying to hear after so long, and their wagon vanished into the night. It's the outro, it's the outro, it's the outro. I really hope you enjoyed the reading of my book's Concept-Prologue. It's only in concept because I haven't finished writing the whole thing yet, but I'm definitely getting there. If you like the reading and the speed paint, why not go follow me on Blue Sky? I post art and some other stuff on there as well, and it'd be really cool if you went and checked it out. I'm technically also on Twitter, but I don't really post anything on there anymore because you know why. But anyway, subscribe, share the video, all that yada yada, and thanks for watching. Bye.